So in a few weeks from now, leaders from around the world will gather in Glasgow in Scotland to come up with a global action plan to stop the planet overheating. Environmental campaigners say we are facing a climate emergency and that action by nations, business and citizens must be swift, bold and far-reaching. But that message is resonating with the public, who tell us that they want lives that are healthier, more sustainable and leave a lighter footprint on the planet. Often it is business that has set the lead on actions to support sustainability, particularly in nations where there is no political consensus on climate change or where political leaders have turned their back on evidence and consequences. So how should business transform its operation and its purpose while continuing to serve customers and stakeholders? I'm delighted that we are going to hear the insights of the global household appliances manufacturer Öztürk, headquartered in Turkey, of course, but active in more than 100 nations, including the United States and China, with production plants in Europe, Russia, China, Africa, and in Asia as well. It is the name behind Beko, Grundig, and other well-known international brands. Please welcome its Chief Executive, Hakan Bulgurlu.
Good evening, everyone. I am a little nervous for a few reasons. First, I think in 2 years, this is definitely the most amount of people I've been in a room without wearing masks, and it does make me a bit nervous, I have to be honest. I mean, I'm happy we're back. I really am happy, but I am a bit nervous. The second reason I'm nervous is I'm standing between you and a good glass of red wine, and I'm talking about sustainability. That's not easy. You know, talking about sustainability, usually, I'm surprised that everyone's in the room actually, is a difficult task. You've been hearing about it a lot. It's a problem in the future. It's no longer in the future, by the way, it's now. And that's the point I'm going to try and make. But you've been told it's in the future. Somebody, somehow, said 2030 is a date we're going to talk about. And that used to be far away. Today, it's only 469 weeks away. So that's not much at all, 469 weeks. When I got onto this journey, I thought what we need to do is raise awareness. And I got very frustrated because people really didn't understand. And maybe because I had young children, I made it my own problem. Maybe because I joined very early the High Commission for Carbon Pricing at the World Bank, which allowed me, despite all of the difficulty and smoke and mirrors coming from the Trump administration, to see pure data from scientists. And the data was the scariest thing I've ever seen in my life. I'm an engineer, and I have never seen anything like this. The situation is getting worse and worse and worse and worse. So, I'm going to talk to you about sustainability. And the way I found it works best is if I mix in a little bit about Everest. Because a few years ago, I said, nobody's listening to me. How can I make them listen to me? I went and climbed Everest. A lot of people died that day. It's a very interesting story. And when I mix it, people generally pay attention. They don't look at their phones. Today, I won't mix it so much, but here we go. That, by the way, made somehow me much more credible, because I had actually gone and put myself at risk, despite having a great job, by what it looks like outside anyway. It's a difficult industry, you all know. Having 3 young kids. But it actually, by putting myself in danger and doing it to raise awareness for the glaciers in the Himalayas, which actually provide water for more than 2 billion people. And when I say water, this is all the water. You may have been in India and lived through the monsoon. Forget about it. That comes, washes away. The only thing that actually people depend on in terms of water, for drinking water and agriculture, is the glaciers in the Himachal Pradesh. Half of them are gone. And in the next 30 years, the other half are gone. And we have all seen what happened in Syria when actually water becomes scarce, and a group of people who don't have water have to move to other people's land. And you're experiencing a bit of this in Europe. We're experiencing it in Turkey with 4.8 million refugees. But this problem is going to get much, 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 much worse. Anyway, it was a success. There's a lot I'm going to talk about, which I've put into my new book, which is coming out soon. I'm not promoting it. It's not for profit. I just want to put data out there so people can understand what's happening. We are getting hotter. Anyone that lived through this summer has experienced this. I mean, it's impossible for you, I don't care where you were, to have not experienced this. Now, when the scientists say July was 1 degree warmer than the 20th century average July, the average is misleading. It means the maximum temperature difference was up to 3 or 4 degrees warmer, sometimes 8 degrees warmer, in our case on the Turkish coast. And of course, a piece of broken glass in the forest starts a fire. We saw fires in an unprecedented scale. We saw floods in Germany that killed more people than they've had in any kind of weather-related or any kind of trauma or accident. So the world is clearly getting warmer, and we all know warmer, and we all know why. I like to put this graphic there so you can visually see it. This is 100 years of data. It is real data. The most recent 40 years is from NASA, and it's surface temperatures. You can see the 2-degree warming places and the 2-degree cooler places. By the way, some parts of the world are getting a bit cooler. You can see here how it accelerates after the 70s and 80s. And now when you come up to 2020, you can see the state of the world. Now, I like this because it's so visual that it gets the point across. You might cook yourself in July, but then September comes around, October, and it's raining, and you're fine, right? You forget about it. This picture should scare you, because the delta is increasing, and that means that agriculture is going to suffer unprecedented disruptions. Meaning, already you're seeing the signs of inflation, not only in Europe, worldwide, for many reasons. One of them being the cost of energy inflating, and it will go further, by the way. There are many reasons for it. But imagine food shortages, what you're used to buying. I mean, maybe not you, but the common person at the bottom end of society who buys a kilo of apples for, I don't know, €1.50 or €2, suddenly has to pay 20 euros for it. Right? That's what we're looking at. We're looking at food insecurity on a massive scale. Technology will help. Efficiencies will help. COVID is helping, I mean, in one way. But unfortunately, the problem is way bigger than that, and that's why COP26 is important. Now, what are we looking at? We're looking at here what we've signed up to, essentially, 1.5 degree path, which essentially means we have to decrease emissions by 5% a year annually between now and 2030 globally. Whereas we've made this promise several years ago, and every year we've increased by 1.5 to 2% so far. So instead of going down, we are continuing to go up. And COVID was a welcome break. There was actually a 7 to 8% reduction in the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So it's now at about 416 parts per million. Where we need to bring it is dramatically different. All the commitments put together around the Paris Accord actually bring us into extinction of the human race, because 3.3 degrees warmer, the world is not survivable. Basically, some argue that some people will survive, but most will not. I'm not a pessimist. I really do believe that nations will come together, especially in COP26. There will be agreement. There will be very strong regulation, including for our industry. And we will actually go on a 2 degree to 1.5 degree warmer path. But anybody that lived through the summer knows that even 1 degree is uncomfortable. 1.5 degree is to the nth degree more uncomfortable. I just want you to understand, I'm not trying to scare you, I just want you to understand the scale of the problem. It is huge. And the only thing that can solve this is global unity and unilateral action. And this has to come through regulation. I spoke about how warm the world is getting. Now, we have all lived in my generation. I mean, you know, I worried about where I'm going to live, what car I'm going to, well, don't really like cars, but what holiday I'm going to go on, you know, the experiences I'm going to live. Whereas my children, who are quite young, 4, 6, and 8 to be exact, they may have food insecurity. They may not have a home or a roof. And this is a very, very real prospect, because we're not looking at 2 generations down the line. We're looking at 1 generation. It makes it very personal. Another aspect you have to remember is that we have lived in a world which has continuously grown. Sometimes 1%, sometimes 2%. We've had years like this one, which were wonderful for us, right? Next year, we're projecting huge growth as well. I saw the graphs from this morning. But that growth is going to go away. The world and the economic system does not know how to survive in a degrowth environment. We're just starting to think about it. If GDP decreases by 20% by 2100, I don't even want to think what security looks like, what mobility looks like. You know, I mean, I can definitely see a lot of wars. So it's a picture we have to avoid at all costs because we haven't lived it before, and definitely the following generations should not have to live it either. The solution. Now, I have always argued, and I still believe that carbon pricing is the solution. We need to, it's like a sin tax. I mean, anybody here that smokes or drinks knows how much tax they're paying. And if you're in Turkey, you're paying 250% on wine, which is a bit excessive. But I'm happy to pay for the carbon that whatever I consume is causing. Everybody should be happy for that. This is something we need to really discuss and bring into action. And actually, of course, it's easy to say from a developed country perspective. A developing country perspective is very different, but we can talk about that separately. In the developed world, the cost of actually decarbonizing our products is low. It is not high. But because we don't do it, we can't ask the emerging world to do it either. And one of the biggest problems is that even though everybody wants environmentally clean products, BCG study I saw, their main partner here, so I can mention their name, but BCG study I saw said that 20% of consumers that had been surveyed were willing to pay 10% or more higher prices for products or services that actually are doing the right thing by the environment. This is really important data. And this morning's presentation also had the new generation's propensity to actually go towards companies and services that are clean. I call it clean. People use a lot of different names. Well, you know what the problem is? There are millions of companies in the world. I mean, just these, I forget, the Pandora Papers, they just released something like 1 million offshore businesses. Only 4,500 companies have now committed to a net zero future in 2050. As businesses, we really, really need to lead by example. And there's no more time. It has to be now. There's no more raising awareness. It's actually pure action. Now I'm going to get into something very difficult, especially when it's time for that glass of wine. I mean, I'd be more comfortable if they would serve you wine here, but if I can have your attention for a few minutes, because I think this is the single most important piece of information you can take with you from here. And this is where I think the biggest difference can be made by business. Now, Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions are what we emit when we're manufacturing something, the whole process. The energy you use, the materials you use. So think of Scope 1 and 2 as basically until you make the product and you put it in the warehouse. Scope 3 emissions is when that product goes to your customer's home, and then it is the emissions, the energy that product consumes in its lifetime in the home. Okay, it's fairly simple. I mean, it's more complicated, but this is a good enough summary. Now, what is the problem? Companies are talking about becoming carbon neutral, and many of them are here, so I apologize. I was on a, Philips is not a sponsor, yeah, I was on a panel in New York at the Climate Week with the chairman of Philips, and I said, well, look, you know, you're not doing enough. And he said, yeah, we're buying all our energy from renewable sources, but now they're in the medical business. I can talk about them, you know. But yeah, they are promising, like everybody else, and I don't blame them, for carbon neutrality in 2040, 2050, some of them 2030. That's just passing the buck along. It's possible to do it much, much earlier. It's possible to do it now. Now, when they are talking about carbon neutrality, it's really important for you to remember, they are talking about carbon neutrality in Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions. Nobody is talking about Scope 3 emissions. Why? Because that is the real Pandora's box, not these British Virgin Island companies of politicians. Once you start talking about how much emissions the product causes, imagine I'm the CEO of Mercedes, and I'm saying, Mercedes-Benz, and I say, Hans, I want to sell you a Mercedes, you know, beautiful SL600. You probably have a bigger one, a Maybach. Let's say you buy a Maybach. Okay, let's say, you know, it doesn't matter, an S-Class Mercedes. And I tell you, by the way, when you use this product over the next 14 years, because that's the average I know from my CRM data, that's how much you'll probably use, the car will be used, you will cause this much carbon to be released into the atmosphere. And by the way, that's almost impossible for you as a person to fix because it's so big, the number, because you're burning fossil fuels. Electric vehicles are included too. So what I'm trying to say is nobody wants to talk about it. But in the case of us, Arçelik, or Beko, the brand you know, we have become carbon neutral. 2019, 2020, we have become carbon neutral today, and we have committed to stay carbon neutral going forward. Now, shareholders, of course, ask questions. Journalists ask difficult questions. So you have to be credible. The old days of just saying things and not doing them are over. There's no more greenwashing. You have to actually do exactly what you say. Now, we became carbon neutral. I don't say that very often. You know why? Because in Arçelik's case, Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions, which we have become carbon neutral across all our manufacturing operations, 28 plants, 9 countries, are only 2% of the emissions we cause. 2%. 98% are Scope 3 emissions. How are we going to solve this problem if we don't talk about Scope 3 emissions? Anyway, we've also decided to, so we've become carbon neutral, as I said. It is important because it's an example. I like to use it as an example because it's one of very few companies coming from an emerging market that has large positions in markets like Pakistan, Bangladesh, India, Vietnam, Indonesia. The list is long, very populous, very poor, and growing. Those are the markets as people consume more washing machines, refrigerators, air conditioners. I mean, who wants to live in Indonesia without an air conditioner? So that's the problem. They are going to consume much more energy. That energy is going to come mostly from fossil fuels, and that is going to cause a huge growth in emissions. Of course, it's not only about emissions, right? We realize we were talking about this at lunch today. This is also something nobody really talks about, but is very important. Energy efficiency is probably the most important weapon you have in this fight against the coming climate crisis. And what I like to say is, instead of fighting coal-based power plants, if you would change the old appliances in the homes, old heating and cooling appliances, old televisions, old washing machines, refrigerators, with new ones, you are solving a huge part of the problem. But then, of course, the problem never stops, right? What do you do with the old ones? Well, once we started doing this in Turkey, we started in Turkey with a massive program to change old energy-consuming appliances with new ones. We were very successful, but then we couldn't find anyone to recycle the old appliances. Then you hit into another problem of a huge waste of resources. So we built our own when we couldn't find anyone. This giant Mad Max-like facility, 40, 50-meter ceilings, very fun to see if anybody wants to go and see it. And we recycled 1.3 million appliances there. So this is large appliances. This is brand agnostic. So if you give me a Miele, I'm happier to recycle it. There's more metal in it. But what I'm trying to say is it's brand agnostic, and the whole point is we reuse more than 90% of the materials that come out of that plant in new products and production. And that, in turn, can unlock a lot of carbon credits for you. So what I'm trying to show you is some ways which you can actually monetize, not monetize, but ease the pain of this conversion. At lunch, we were speaking with a gentleman, Andrea, about the law in Italy, where the digital signaling is changing now. So all the TVs are changing, massive boom in sales. Well, what are you doing about the old ones is the question. And of course, it's a huge bottleneck. Warehouses are full, recyclers are full, nobody can deal with it. That is something that has to be dealt with before the problem happens, actually, because the amount of carbon credit you could get from dealing with that waste is significant, and nobody figures that in the equation yet. We've also done a lot of work around the products. I won't bore you, but I mean, one is very interesting, the BioCycle refrigerator. The brief I gave to our R&D teams was simple. If I bury the fridge in the garden, 2 years later, I dig it up, I don't want to see it anymore. And they said that's impossible. That's how it started. We're 70% there, not 100%, but 70% there. And you know what's amazing about this? The cost up is insignificant. It is very, very, very small. And consumers are starting to respond to this, so that we have basically the whole sustainability message has to go through your product ranges, so consumers can also react to that. This is a product that the industry is not very happy with us for actually bringing forward, and I understand why. You all love fast fashion, and I tell them, so I don't mind using their names, but H&M, Zara, you know, the whole world shops from them now. And they have gotten into a habit of giving you disposable clothing. And for that, they have actually made clothing cheap. And to make it cheap, they've turned to synthetic yarn manufacturers. Synthetic yarn is made 100% from oil. And it's plastic. It's the same thing as plastic. No difference from the plastic cup in your hand. So that plastic that comes in becomes yarn. The petrol becomes yarn, and then it becomes clothing. Then you actually put it in our washing machine, or any washing machine. Each wash releases around 1 million pieces of microfibers. They call it microfibers. Doesn't sound as bad, but it's actually microplastics. And it's invisible. No municipality can filter this. None of them. It's too big an investment. This came up at a lunch with a friend who's very concerned about these things. Again, the R&D teams worked, and now we've been able to bring the cost significantly down. At IFA, our industry fair, some of you I'm sure heard, we open sourced the technology. We have many patents around it. We said, please use it. I am sure this will become regulation. It has to become regulation. The fish we tested, not us, but universities that we funded tested, basically found samples of plastic in every single one of them that they tested. So it became pointless to test. When you get 100% result each time you do something anywhere in the world, there's no more point in testing. We're eating that plastic and we're getting sick ourselves. This is an example of what I think business needs to do to really make a difference. Now, you've all heard of the science-based targets, and this is where greenwashing has gone away. Now everything is really tracked scientifically, and I've passed my time, I apologize, I'll finish. But the point here is we had earlier committed to a 15% reduction in Scope 3 emissions by 2030. We will stay carbon neutral, by the way, in Scope 1 and Scope 2 going forward indefinitely. Now, what we're about to do is something, and I'm going to be at COP26 to announce it. I don't have the clearance yet to share with you, but we will announce a much, much more dramatic cut in Scope 3 emissions, the highest that I've seen in any industry. And the point being, we are committing, we're doing something that many people aren't comfortable doing. We are committing to innovation and technology which isn't there today, that will be applied to our products by then to actually achieve those targets. So it's a leap of faith, but I think that's what's needed by business, and I hope actually you took a little bit away that you can actually apply to yourself. A result of this, hugely rewarding. Arçelik today leads the Dow Jones Sustainability Index for 2 years in a row. I'll always love it when, you know, in the US, you go to the UN or any platform or COP26, and you walk up and you say you're a Turkish company, and they're like, what? You know, you're not Swedish, you're not American, you're not German, you know, you're Turkish, and you lead the index? Yes, yes, it's possible. You can come from an emerging market, and you can do this. And the rewards are many. The green bond we raised, 3% interest may seem high to you, Europeans, but you know, in Turkey, that's 2 points below the Turkish government sovereign debt cost. So it's the only company that can borrow cheaper than its government. So it's a real affirmation. And why? 1.6 billion demand. Why? Because they see what we're doing. And money is going to flow increasingly in this direction. And I think consumers are increasingly going to change our brand, choose our brand for doing this. Thank you very much for listening to me. Ten minutes over, sorry.
Hakan, no, it's fine. Thank you very much. You're going to be joined on stage by Chris Bram. Chris, if you'd like to come on up. And we'll also be joined online by Enrique Martinez. So give them both a round of applause, please.
Yeah.
Chris Bram, you know, of course, from Electrolux, SVP Sales and Services. Do we have Enrique Martinez? There he is. I see him on our screen there, the Chief Executive of Fnac Darty. Enrique, welcome to our discussions as well. Good of you to join us. It is a shame, Enrique, that you cannot be with us in person, but we understand. We hope.
I know. It's so difficult to leave Paris, you know. It's a so beautiful city. It trapped us. So next time.
Yes,
and congratulations to Chris and all the team to do that possible. I'm very happy to be with you today.
Your heart is breaking, I can tell. Right, thank you. Let's talk about the concept of purpose-driven companies in this age of disruption. Hakan, you mentioned that in your presentation. Enrique, I'll start with you. Just your thoughts on the idea that people, planet and companies are interconnected.
Yeah, I think today is, I enjoyed the presentation. Thank you to share with us. I think obviously today the industry need to be exemplar in this area. We are a big polluters on the planet. I mean, we are producing products that is creating a lot of disturbance in their atmosphere, and we are responsible for that. So we need to be quickly to find good solutions, and not only for the impact on our own operation, but mostly, and the most important is for the impact for the long term, for the product we put in the market. We make the same calculus that you made, and 80% of our global impact that we've done is related to the usage of our products. So this is what we should be our main actions. And for sure, there's different things we can talk on during the conversation, but I think one of the main focus is that we all agree on the past that we need to be focused on the customer, and customer is the most important. And I be quite cautious on the previous panel on the customer is the king. And I think we need to really change this approach and to say the citizen is the king. It's not just the customer. Customer is a small way to see the things. I think today we need to open and be much more abroad and to say we work for the customers, we are responsible for the whole citizens of the planet. And that changed completely the way that we should operate our business. For sure, we continue to do business in a profitable way. Our first responsible social responsibility is to create profit, to continue to create jobs and to make growth. But doing that, integrating the things that for the citizens is important, for the citizens from today, but also for our kids on the future. So that changed a little bit the way we should look for our business.
And we could give us a couple of examples then. When you talk about changing your business, what have you done?
Yeah, I think for sure we are all, the first drive is to sell more, the chiffre d'affaires, we say in France, the turnover. And if you do that, probably you don't care about how much time the people keep the product in their homes. Your first drive is to try to replace all the products every year. I mean, this is a dream, right? And I think the paradigm for this industry should be totally different. I mean, we need to work on the better products, more quality ones, less impact on the planet, and the ones that the customer can keep for longer in their home if they want it. And this changed, and I know this is difficult for the industry to hear that, but I think that's what we need to do today. Means we need to be more open, to have spare parts available for years and years. We need to create the industry and the facilities to repair more and more in good condition with a good pricing to keep the customers the ability to keep the product for longer. For sure, there's also the innovation and things can drive the turnover for the future, but we don't need to force the customer to change the product if they don't want it and they don't need it. I think that changed the vision for the industry, and that changed a lot for the companies, because probably we need to accept that maybe the companies will have less sales, but different ones, and we need probably to integrate more qualitative services in the business model for the industrial, but also for the retailers. And the other thing I think it changed a little bit is probably that equation can exclude companies that are not interested in playing the whole game. I mean, it's so easy to play in an industry and just be a part of the one part of the chain. If we want to be, I don't know, coherent, we are saying we need to force that everybody should play the whole music, right, and not just the one. So the one they distribute, they should be also responsible to cooperate in the whole process to recycling, repair, reusage, and so on. And I think this is also a different way to look the role for each actor in this industry.
Okay, thank you. Chris Bram, winner of the TCG Award for Sustainability this year. Congratulations on that, and winner the last time that we had this award as well. What has your sustainability journey been?
Yeah, maybe to link to your original question.
Sure.
On what does this mean for people, planet, and of course the company. I think in the end, it's. I think you said it as well, Hakan. I mean, it's making a decision as a company. Yeah, I mean, if you take the stance and you are, I would say, genuinely concerned, yeah, or it's in your DNA, as I said earlier, then this is a no-brainer. Yeah, so it's all about making choices as a company, and that means leadership. I think then the other part, not touching planet yet, it's all about the people in that company working, fair enough, you know, being it, you know, section 1, section 2, which you can control directly yourself already today in a very good manner. But at the same time working very hard on solutions, allowing and enabling consumers, customers, to make that choice every single day themselves. That's what it's about people. It's about us in the company, but it's also about enabling others to make those decisions for themselves every single day. It doesn't mean we're going to tell them what to do. No, we will enable them. Yeah, and that, of course, leads them back to what kind of appliances are you able to produce. You can, of course, work with recycled plastics. You can look at other, I would say, types of gas, you know, in your dryers. There's many aspects how you can come up with a much greener range in the end. However, if you do not leverage the force of all those people, you will never get there. Yeah, because you need the mass. I think that also came across very well in your presentation earlier. It's a common problem. Not everybody every day wants to think about it still. That's fair. But if you enable them, they at least have the choice and the option to do so. And that again, then I think leads back to the planet. I mean, we have, in 2020, we started with a program called For the Better. There, of course, we've put as well the objectives and targets. But it's all about buying a very big mirror and starting with yourself. Okay, thank you.
Slido.com for your questions. We'll come to them in just a moment. But Hakan, just to pick up on that point, and it's such an important point, your microphone will work just fine, by the way, that you've already got. The question of empowering consumers. In how much of this are you a leader of consumer behavior, and how much are you keeping abreast of them? You know, who leads in this?
It's a simple enough question, but the answer is a bit complicated. Why? Because at the moment, it's very, very hard to judge what the consumer's priority is. If you're looking at today, is it financial? Is it health? Is it planet? But what I can tell you very clearly from very large sample sizes, I mean, a Nielsen study of 60,000 people across all age groups, very diverse, no tricks in the data, shows that consumers now, their number one concern is becoming the climate and the planet. So if that's the case, any communication campaign addressing that or any partnership with retailers. So for us, the most important thing is now, in the next phase, is to partner with retailers to share this message of doing the right thing, becoming carbon neutral, creating carbon credits by selling products with much higher recycled material content, much lower energy consumption or resource consumption. But not just that. Taking the old appliance and committing to that and recycling that. You know, there are many things we can communicate to the consumer together with retailers. And I think we're going to see much more of that. And to your point, Chris, I saw with my own eyes, we did a very simple experiment in one of our products, we use discarded PET water bottles. Why? Because it's a big problem, right? They're all glass here, thank God, but go to India, they still have these 250 milliliter disposable ones. You know, it drives me crazy. In a meeting room, there's 100 of them on the table, and they don't get recycled. So we figured out a way to use them in the washing machine drums, and we've used 60 or 70 million, so the number is not huge. I mean, it's something, but it's not going to move the needle. It's a new program. We put the product across all brands, including yours. All brands, different price levels, different designs, so different segments. And the consumers, the only information they had was how much recycled material was in the washing machines and what that material was. And they responded to the plastic water bottles. Some people could recognize the designs, most couldn't. But they all chose, most of them chose, especially the younger people, almost 100% chose that. So I think this trend is going to accelerate.
Okay, let's talk about some of the changes that you collectively think need to happen in this industry, in the way this industry operates, in the way that consumers behave as well. And we've got some questions reflecting that on Slido, slido.com, the event code TCG 2021. I don't know if we're putting them up on a screen somewhere around, but I can read out what some of these questions are. Exchanging products that cost less than €200 instead of repairing them is an industry standard for retailers currently. What can we do to change that? And Chris, that goes to the point of the circular economy, of reusing rather than replacing.
I don't think you sell anything under €200, do you?
We don't. That's a good start, by the way, selling value.
It doesn't say which products, by the way.
Okay. I think you were thinking of major domestic appliances here. If you talk about the circular economy, I mean, it's not only high on our radar. We have models working, you know, to see how to scale this. Because I think in the end, it's not that we, you know, are figuring it out and say that's a direction that we should take. No, it's more like how can you make, in the end, a much bigger impact than you have today? And that's the question that you have to actually, or the equation that you have to solve. I see it as well as a responsibility of a branded manufacturer. Yeah, I mean, to enable, again, it's the same word. You can do it with a product, making it visible, that you have a trade-off between more or less water, for example. You can do it on many appliances, by the way. And therefore, you are more green, and the same for energy, or less green. It's your choice. Every single, I would say cycle, every single day. But in the end, it's the responsibility, in my opinion as well, from the of the branded manufacturer, and it means what you also saw, I think, from Arslik. We also have the steps there to partner with specialists, but also to set up, you know, clearly our own, let's call it steps there to take that responsibility and take it in our own hands. WEEE is one way to do it, but there's many more.
Okay, thank you. A similar question, or a question making a similar point, let me just highlight it. For you, what can we do as brands and retailers in the after-service and repair to reduce carbon emissions? Enrique, let me bring you just in on this thought of how we persuade consumers, how we make it viable for consumers to repair and reuse stuff they've got already rather than buying new. And that's something that goes beyond this industry, but just focusing on TCG. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think customers today, they are much more open to have a repair more than a change. And the first question that the customer put today buying a large appliance is for how long this product can work, to me, more than the functionality, the design, or the energy efficacy. Today in France, I don't know, I believe this is quite similar for the mature countries, is for how long and what happens if it's a problem, who can repair, for what cost. So it means that customers today are much more aware, and probably COVID accelerate this process. So I think the demand is there, and now it's a question for the industry to be prepared to face this demand. In our case, we are looking for double the repairs in the next 5 years, and it means that more than 2.5 million repairs by year. Means it's a huge industry in just a small country like France. Imagine in a worldwide vision. Means that everybody needs to work on that plan. Means that we need to train technicals. We need to create this industry. For sure, we need to create an economic model to be sustainable. So needs to be everybody. We need to make money enough to sustain this model. It's not. We are not a non-profit organization, and by the end, we need to keep our business going on. But it is not. Is not impossible. I mean, for us, it's totally clear that we need to move out of this transactional and waste of products, and we need to go for much more functional and quality products. And for that, the industry needs to move on quickly. And I think this is the right moment to do it. And I think we are leading. This industry is led by very beautiful industrials. Some examples like Electrolux, Beko, and the other one. I think we are now. Everything is on us to do that. I think it's the right timing. I think Europe needs to lead this process. And I think this is something we can create example worldwide. And there are other examples in the other countries, but I think the conscientiousness on the consumers and the citizens in Europe, in particular, I think they need to drive by example and need to create this dynamic all around the world.
But Hakan, this is such a tremendous challenge to this industry. The clue is in the name, consumer goods. It's about consumption. And we're talking about changing that.
Changing consumer behavior has been very difficult. If you go back quite some years. But there are amazing, amazing examples, like the Montreal Agreement, which actually bans CFCs. It's one of the rarest moments where the world actually came together, consumers responded, and they disappeared from our lives. We don't talk about the ozone hole anymore. And that was not one country's problem or one consumer group's problem. That was a global issue that got solved. I think of it the same way. As people become more aware, unfortunately not because we're speaking, but because they are feeling it in their backyard or in their wallets or in the food cost of food inflation. Inflation is going to be a huge problem. I think people will pay more attention. As they pay more attention, they'll be willing to change. And as they're willing to change, then we need to give them the option. What are the options? But just one last piece. I don't think, for example, we should say, let's try and service something that costs more to service than a new one would cost. I think we need to stay within our economic models. If we're going to change it, let's just make sure we're recycling it properly. Let's just make sure the product it's replaced with consumes less energy, is made with recycled plastics. You know, let's go with the flow, but do the best we can. And just those low-hanging fruits will already take us a long way.
It depends how you define cost. Because it's not just the sticker price, the financial cost.
No, but you're going to take us into an area which is I talk a lot about in my book. The problem, the root cause of all of this problem is how economics has been defined. I mean, you can go all the way back to people like Friedman. We didn't put a value on a diminishing resource, which is nature, right? We've destroyed 70% of the ecosystem. Why? Because there was no value. As it becomes scarce, the value would go up under our normal economical system, but somehow they didn't give a value. So that little omission, 1,000 years ago, 800 years ago, brought us here today.
Okay. Chris, go on.
Can I comment?
Yes, please.
I think the other point here as well is that, I mean, especially in France, of course, we have now the legislation, I mean, repairability index. So instead of being transactional, you actually make the consumer aware that there's a life cycle coming. Yeah, you give him or her the, I would say, insight and foresight, what you can expect, what the branded manufacturer actually will do with you and for you, i.e. again, taking responsibility. That's why I think it's also a matter of making it come alive in store, online, and step by step, to your point, ensuring that the consumers see that that option is available. Yeah, and then again, each time they can make the trade-off. Sometimes, again, you want to have that, the dishes done in 45 minutes. It's consuming more than 4 hours eco-cycle. We all get that. But you need to make it visible that it's every single cycle your choice.
Okay, thank you very much. Hakan, looking forward to COP26, the international conference in Glasgow in a few weeks' time, conference of political leaders. You expect it to be successful? That it will achieve something meaningful?
I'm hopeful, but I don't expect it to be successful, because I think what's going on between, there's some meetings in Zurich as we speak, so between the US and China mainly, I think that needs to come to some kind of agreement before COP26 for there to be any success. Businesses will make major commitments, regulation will come in, don't get me wrong, but what I define as success is actually that 1.5 degree world we're talking about, that I wear the badge of. Anything short of that, we might as well go to Mars, you know. So it's how you define success, and that's only possible with the geopolitical alignment of China and the US, which I'm hoping, at least it's better than when Trump was around. So hopefully.
Is it really?
A little better.
If there is no agreement between the US and China, is it any better than it was before? If the conference does not lead to meaningful change, does this issue then fall back down the public agenda? Does it become seen as either too difficult or not urgent enough, or does the reality around us make people say we need to do something?
The data is clear, the urgency is clear, and it's only going to accelerate. So even if there's no success here, people will react to the experiences they're having, to the reality around them changing. And that, unfortunately, comes when it becomes too unbearable. I hope we react before then. It becomes unchangeable. So we have to have a little bit of foresight, and I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful in the human nature that, you know, we like all beings, even single-cell beings, are programmed for survival. It's the most basic instinct. And if we don't react for survival as human beings and we call ourselves smart, there's something wrong anyway, you know. So I'm hopeful.
Thank you very much. See, they've taken the applause you were going to get anyway at the end of the session. You got an advance payment on it. Thank you all for your questions. Please join me in thanking our panelists, including Enrique, who's joined us virtually. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris.